What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you go and sign up for our email newsletter at coinmastery.com/invest. Welcome to the show. If you have never been here, we're doing daily updates on the crypto markets Monday through Friday to help you make better decisions and to absolutely crush it on this massive financial revolution. As you can see, or as you can hear, my voice is starting to fall apart because it is Thursday, typically by the end of the week. So that's what happens. So we're just going to rock it out. We're just going to power through as usual. Today, what we're talking about is a lot of macro news. We're going to talk about a few things that happened yesterday. And specifically, I want to talk about why I think they happened. Not necessarily the news, but more of the macro and market behavior and what you can learn from that so that in the future, as you see it happening again, you're making a better decision about it. You're not having any sort of knee-jerk reaction. And that will either help you make more money or not lose money, both of which are equally important in the investing game, especially when it's as emotionally driven as this. I'm going to talk about a couple pieces of news and what they may be hinting at. Also, just some good top-level stuff to be thinking about in order to better think about your portfolio, your future, the profits that you inevitably will be making. All right, so Bitcoin, as we left yesterday, was starting to do really well. It had a little bit of a pullback. Let me zoom in here. Not that the 30-minute or anything less than this is very helpful from a strategic standpoint, but it is helpful just to see the price action and the volume. But we saw right around, I think it was right around here is when we saw this thing really start to pick up. And we've seen a full day really above 4,100. So that's a really good sign. That means that this breakout that happened right at 4,100 is holding thus far. Now, the big question, which I'm sure many of you are asking is, well, does that mean we should buy or we should sell? That's really your call. My personal, my personal strategy is that I'm going to wait until 4,300 before I even think about buying anything. And even if I did buy at 4,300, it wouldn't necessarily be in Bitcoin. I'd probably just buy so that I could go buy an altcoin that's underpriced that I could potentially swing. So you see what I'm saying? So it's not necessarily, is this going up? It's, am I going to be able to buy in at an entry point that's either going to hold its price or go up, knowing that there's an opportunity somewhere else that I've already got my eyes on? So buying into Bitcoin just buys me time to go get a big swing somewhere else. That's the only time you would ever really want to buy into a non-dip situation. At least in my opinion, that's what I would do. And so that's my strategy. So I've got my eyes on the altcoin market, looking at the dips, seeing what's, the kind of the tried and true coins that I've always liked, researching some new ones. But if this does get up to a 4,300 and it looks like it's going to be around 4,300 for a while, and I see a dip in the altcoin market, that may be an opportunity to buy in. I still don't love that because it's not a big blood market, but if you can make money, you can make, fortune favors the bold. So won't be an idiot about it, but that's my plan. That's what I'm doing, and accordingly. But I'm getting to the point now, personally, where after going through enough cycles and enough, you start to go through and you look at your trade sheet. And if you don't trade, this doesn't really apply, but it's good to think about anyway. You tend to make a majority of your money off of a handful of just really, really, really good trades. Right. I talked about July, 19th that happened. I talked about, I did not make, I made some money on this last drop, but it wasn't a huge buy-in, right? Like I wasn't totally prepared for it. I did scalp some at the 3,900. It came back down, but then it went back up. So it wasn't a huge win like the July one was. But when you look back at all your trades, it makes you realize that the highest percentage and the highest gains really only happen when things are really bad. And then you buy when it pops up. And so that's why I'm really just not apprehensive, but I'm not eager to spend money right now, because statistically, both for myself and from talking to other traders, it's just a lot harder when there's not a huge dip. And I'm getting to the point now where that's just not really what I'm good at. I'm a fundamental macro guy, and that's where I'm at with this. That's what I'm going to keep doing, keep watching, keeping my eyes on the altcoins in case there is a big opportunity that I can bypass. I go from fiat to Bitcoin over to altcoins, scalp it, and then move it back into Bitcoin to hold it. So we'll see. One thing I wanted to say, I want to say this at the beginning of the video because this is when most people are watching or listening on the podcast, is a quick story about Hugh Hefner, who just died. And whatever you think about him and what he's done in the past, whatever, that's your call. I'm not here to make any sort of statement on what he did, but he died, and I thought it would just be a good time to tell a quick story about Hugh Hefner, which I think is one of my favorite stories that I've ever heard, and I think you guys will really appreciate this. One of my business partners, very successful guy, great person, he built a company in the 1990s when he just graduated from college. And between the ages of 22 and 28, he built it to be a $400 million company. And it's just an unbelievable success story. Really just energetic, sales-focused guy, but he really believes in what he's doing. And when he was 27, his company was making somewhere in the order of 80 to 90 million a year. And it was in 1999, I believe. So right as things were like really screaming on the internet. And he got invited to the Playboy Mansion party. So he goes and he's having a great time, and the night starts to wind down, and he finds himself at the end of the night in a back area with Hugh Hefner and a few other people. Everyone's just kind of, relaxing after a long night and sipping on their drinks and just kind of enjoying the grounds that they're at, this beautiful mansion and everything else. And everybody leaves except for my buddy and Hugh Hefner. And he's on top of the world. He's got everything going for him. He's got, whatever. So he turns to Hugh and he says, "Listen, man, I'm 27. My company's doing 90 million a year. I have the most amazing, beautiful fiance. Everything in my life is just awesome. What advice would you have for a guy like me?" And Hugh Hefner, in his robe, has a martini in his hand and takes a sip of it and kind of looks around at his gorgeous house and all the people that are around him, and turns to my buddy and he says, "Control your environment." And that to me was like the most kind of insightful and amazing thing that he could have said, because what happened was my business partner was kind of like, "Well, who cares about that? What does that mean?" And he left, and a year later, he ended up selling his company 3 months before the market crashed for a couple $100 million. And as he's gotten older, and as he has built more and more companies, and as he has seen more and more investment opportunities, and the stakes have gotten higher and higher when you have that kind of money, he has realized the deep truth to those 3 words. And we were raising a couple $1 million for an app we were working on. And we were late at night in New York, and I asked him the same question because he's older than I am. And I said, "Hey, what advice would you have for a guy like me?" And he told me that story, and he said, "Dude, I'm telling you, control your environment. It's the best thing you can do." And the reason I like to tell that story is, one, it's a great story, but 2, when you are looking at things like investing and really just anything in life, the more you control your own destiny, the better off you're going to be, especially as you start to grow, as you start to make more money, as you start to make more profits, as you start to put more on the line. You have to start adopting this mentality of controlling your future, controlling your environment. And obviously you can't control everything, and there's certainly an important piece of life is to let go and not to try to control everything. But I think, and I tweeted about this yesterday, I think many people underestimate how much they can control their future in this business. Specifically, if you buy something, if you buy a coin or whatever, and you find yourself just hoping that that coin is going to go up, and you're kind of to the mercy of the whales in the market, you need to realize like there is something you can do. You can reach out to the team. You can start a blog. You can go out and network and tell everybody you know about that coin and get a coin. Like there's always something you can do. And the more you can control the environment ethically, you can't do like, insider trading or anything that's illegal. You got to play by the rules. But there's always something you can do to control your future, to control the environment, to control the results, at least control it more than just sitting back and hoping things work out. And that is one of the best lessons I ever got, especially as you grow in life. And as you get older in life, the stakes always get higher because you're losing time and often you're making more money. And as those two things happen, the ability or the mindset of controlling your environment, it's really, really important. And I think it's super important about this. It's easy to feel helpless in a market like this. And I think it's important to realize you are not helpless. You can do a lot to control the outcome of how well you leave crypto in 5 years. You have a lot more control over what that looks like than you think right now. I mean, that's myself included, right? Like I need to think about this too as I go into it. So just wanted to put that out before people tune out. So always like that one. Like I said, looking at the altcoins, altcoin market, the two big stories yesterday, I mean, there's always a million big stories, but the two I wanted to talk about are AdEx and Zcash. Those seem to be the two that everybody's talking about. And I'm going to start with Zcash. I mentioned it yesterday. I didn't have a good idea of what was causing this big spike. It was not the Ethereum thing. It was being listed on Bithumb, which is the huge Korean exchange. So I didn't know that yesterday. Today, that's what it is, just so that you know. And I think what's really interesting is when you, the announcement didn't come until here. And if you're listening on the podcast, what I'm doing is looking at the chart, and there's two big spikes. One that happened at, 9 o'clock p.m. or 8 o'clock p.m., I guess. And then one that happened the day before at 8 o'clock. So there's a first initial spike, a little bit of a down trough, and then a second initial spike, which is a little bit what we talked about yesterday in terms of how pump mechanics tend to work. And what happened over here is that it was very obvious that there was a lot of insiders that had some really good information, and they bought it. No one really knew what it was, and then the major news came out, and that's what drove the huge spike. And then we see the inevitable sell-off that always seems to happen off of this exchange type of news. So I think that this is really interesting to see. And I think the reason why I want to bring this up really doesn't have anything to do with Zcash. It has to do with this idea of what is considered to be big news quickly becomes commodified. The last time Bithumb, right? Bithumb, whatever, is being listed, things being listed, when we had Ethereum Classic, we had Monero, we had Litecoin, they all just went through the roof because it was unexpected news. And we saw a huge spike, and we did not see an immediate sell-off. It was a huge spike with a little bit of a sell-off, people taking profits, but it wasn't like this. It didn't look like there was clear market manipulation happening. And that is the thing that you guys should care about. Meaning, when you see a repeatable action happening, realize that it will not be repeatable for very long. A good example of this is ICO arbitrage. Worked really well for a while, and now it doesn't work really well because everybody knows that it's a system. And as soon as everybody is waiting for that to happen, the smart money is already 3 steps ahead of you. They already know, like they're getting better deals or controlling whatever they need to control to make sure that they do make their money. And the same thing is true with this. So it's not to say that getting listed on exchanges is not a bad strategy. In fact, that's probably a great strategy for getting these quick scalps. It's more like if it's already been proven that one exchange, BitHum in this example, is a catalyst, and you're looking at the list of other coins that have not been listed yet, realize that those are going to get bought up and priced out just like this, so that when it does get listed, people can dump all their shares on you. So starting to identify how there's really no repeatable, easy ways to make big money in any market. I mean, many of you guys know I was in the App Store, and I can't tell you how many tricks and things that you could do with keywords and ads and everything else that for 3 weeks you would just see these windfalls, but then everyone would start to do it, and then it wouldn't work anymore, and then you'd do something else. And the same thing is true in crypto, and it'll just start to commodify itself. So as you look at this, it's not necessarily bad news. I mean, you can certainly still arbitrage this if that's a strategy of yours, but it's important to think about what are you doing? What kind of information are you getting that has not been done yet? What sort of new opportunities are going to be the first to do it? Because that's when you make the big money. And I wish I had the answer for you, but I don't. But it's good to just keep that strategic mindset in place. Same thing with AdEx. There was a huge run on AdEx back in the day and came down, I believe, right around here on 27. I tweeted about, hey, this looks good. And it went up a little bit, and then it came way back down. And now it's getting a second run. And it seems like there's a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit, or not Reddit, but a lot of people who are all kind of talking about the same thing at the same time. Meaning, one person makes a trade call, and then 15 other people are magically making the same trade call. And you see this network effect of everyone buying everything at the same time. So let me zoom in here on the 30-minute, and you're seeing, a bit of a pump happening, some profits being taken along the way. Probably a lot of these people that have owned AdEx for so long that they're just happy to be out of their position. And then you're seeing the volume trickle down, but you're seeing these secondary spikes. You're seeing the price hold even with volume coming down, meaning people bought it and they're holding it because they're like, well, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. And that's to be determined. I don't know about AdEx in general, how it's going to do. But that is another thing that I'm starting to see that you guys should be aware of. One reason why I try not to get into the trade call stuff is because it's really just like it's a market manipulation game where if everybody colludes, whether or not they're conscious of it, and all recommend the same thing, it shoots up and then it comes back down, and it inevitably makes some people a lot of money and it ruins a lot of other people. And that's just not the game I want to play. I'm not saying that anyone's doing this maliciously. I'm just saying that is what's happening right now. So I think this is just the kind of thing to keep your eye on. When you see 5 people posting charts and they all seem to be posting the same things, it's because many people realize that, hey, if they post the same charts as the top guys are posting, they're probably going to get the credit for the same trade calls too, and then they can charge for whatever thing they're doing. And that's just like somebody's always making money and somebody's always losing money in finance. Like it's a zero-sum game, for better or for worse. And you got to keep that in mind. So that is what it is. I think that's the kind of stuff that I think is important to think about is in this market, what forces are driving these spikes? Because companies just don't grow this fast. Markets don't move this fast unless it's driven by emotion and things like that. All right. Some quick news items that I thought were interesting. Gibraltar is making, and I'll link all this stuff up, is making ICOs kind of making an ICO haven. And I don't think that this particularly is that important. I don't think that ICOs are going to have like a second coming of ICOs or anything like this. But what I do think is important for you guys is to see how, because this is a global currency, it's a global thing, it's a global business. If everybody shuts, if 80% of the countries shut down something, there's always going to be 20% that sees an opportunity in this. And that's what makes this whole business so interesting. So I always find these kind of news articles very interesting, because it makes it clear that somebody always sees opportunity in Bitcoin. That's why it's never been able to just kill it. It's because there's even if everybody tries to shut it down, there's always countries or governments or institutions that are like, maybe we'll be the one that doesn't shut it down. And that's always a good indicator of not necessarily where the money's going to flow, but it gives an indication of timeline on how the big institutions, regulators, governments, how quickly they will respond. Because if this gets up and running and this starts doing well quickly, the reaction from other big country governments will be a lot quicker than this. So you can always gauge the timeline of movement from different governments based on how fast the competitors or the movement is happening. So that's why stuff like this can be very helpful in terms of, hey, when's China going to come out with their own currency or their own crypto or whatever it may be? Often the best proxy to figure that out is to look at how fast the alternatives are starting to pop up. So we've already seen Korea and Japan immediately start to say, hey, we're going to start selling a lot of stuff. That puts a lot of pressure. You see this as ICOs. That puts a lot of pressure on the countries that are regulating ICOs. So it's always important to look at this kind of stuff from a macro standpoint. Gives you an idea of how you can get a better sense of the timeline. Marketplace. This is nothing to do with Civic. Obviously, I own Civic. I'm not trying to promote it. I'm not saying you should go out and buy Civic at all. But what I did, I saw this Vinny Lingham, the founder. He tweeted this. I thought this was really interesting, because this is what it looks like when a company releases news, right? When a company comes out and they say, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're making money, here's how we are getting distribution, here's how we are going to grow this business. I'm not saying like it's got to be a nice website or whatever. I'm talking about the actual stuff that they're talking about here, like integrating into WordPress, figuring out how they can get subscriptions, how they're building a marketplace that can collect actual money. This is an interesting roadmap in the sense that Civic and Vinny are talking about, hey, here's how we're going to make money, versus you go to and look at a lot of product roadmaps and they're like, oh, here's the wallet we're building, and here's how fast our code's going to be, and here's the blockchain improvements. But this is more about, hey, here's how we're going to make a business. Here's how we're going to make money. And as an investor, and a venture capital investor, angel investor, whatever, this is the kind of stuff that is more important to see to make money down the road. Now, again, I am not saying that this is the Civic's going to do well, that they are going to make money. I have no idea. I own some. It's up to you. But what I do think is when you are looking at these updates, these roadmap updates, or just any sort of developer updates, ask yourself how many of these updates are geared or are thinking about growth and monetization. Because at the end of the day, like, that's really the name of the game. I mean, building amazing products is how you build the $100 billion company. No question about that. But for the 99% of everything else, growth in sales and monetization is how you make the $60 billion companies on repeat, right? So don't necessarily need the unicorn. You want the business to win. So I think that's what I got out of this. Besides the fact that it's Civic, it's not a huge deal. Second to last piece of news, Bitstamp gives users Bitcoin Cash but postpones trading indefinitely. I think that this is interesting in terms of control that exchanges have, but more importantly, I'm interested in what this means for Coinbase. Many times in not unregulated, but uncharted territory, the getting precedent is a very, very important thing. And so because Bitstamp did this, which basically means, hey, if you had Bitcoin on our exchange, we're going to give you your Bitcoin Cash, but you can't trade it here. So you got to take it off and go trade it somewhere else because we're not going to exchange it. By setting that precedent, it's going to be interesting with Coinbase. Are they going to allow people to trade Bitcoin Cash? They've said they're going to give people Bitcoin Cash, and they may have said they're going to allow the exchange. I'm not positive on that, but this is interesting to me. And it may change the way I look at Bitcoin Cash in terms of what the future holds, right? I think that the whole China thing is more interesting in terms of price than this is, but it doesn't impact the overall market sentiment and attitude towards Bitcoin Cash, which is, for the most part, pretty negative. But I thought this was interesting. I think that I'm going to keep my eye on Coinbase and see what kind of language they're using in terms of, hey, we're going to issue it, but we're not going to let you trade it here or buy it here. And I may be misspeaking. If they've already released that statement, please let me know. But I don't think that they said they would actually allow people to buy it. They would just give people access to it. Now, one rumor, let me be clear here. This is not confirmed. I do not know if this is legit or not. So please, I'm not trying to spread any rumors here, but this did get me thinking about something. I tried to verify it, but I couldn't find anything. So he says, this is a guy, Star Tail. From what I hear, Bittrex will start listing coins again in 1 to 2 months after their internal audit of current listings and delistings. We've talked about this a month ago now with the whole SEC and securities and what's called the Howey test, which is what the SEC uses to determine if something is a security. And Bittrex, which they openly said a while back that they are going through all their coins and making a decision on whether or not they're going to delist anything. Remember with Kraken, we talked about that a while back. And it seems like if this is true, they're going to, that's going to become public information at some point in the next month or two. And what that means for you is that if you have not looked through the Howey test, go to Google and type in HOWIE test. And it's kind of like a checkbox of what makes something a security versus what makes something not a security. It really comes down to, is there intention of people trying to make money using this token? And I do not have the answers. I can't, please don't ask me to like, hey, is this a security? This is not, I don't know. But if I were you, and what I'm going to do is go through my own coins and make my own decisions and look and see if Bittrex volume is a leading driver of that current price. And if it is, make a decision that way. I'm not going to publicly talk about this because if I'm wrong, I'm going to get skewered for that. And that's not really what I'm into. So what I will say, whether or not this is true or not, I think it's a good point. At some point, Bittrex is going to have to list and delist different coins, right? Like things like DNT and 0x are probably going to get on Bittrex. If I was going to have to guess, certain things are going to get pulled off. Make sure you're one step ahead. Control your environment. You know, you are in control of whether or not this is a surprise for you. Last piece, which many of you guys saw on Twitter, I tweeted about this today. And this came actually from listening to that Ari Paul podcast yesterday, I talked about yesterday, and a few others. When we're thinking about the current space, right? The internet's the easiest comparison. And I think that I'm starting to think that we're earlier than I previously thought about cryptocurrency, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily a good thing, because a majority of what's out there right now is like the stuff that isn't really that exciting and not really very, it's not going to last very long. And I don't know what coins will last. I don't know what's going to be around and what's not going to be around, but I would encourage you, go check this out and start thinking that way. What companies do you think will be able to survive for 5-10 years, if any? And if not, what's the plan behind that? I think it's just an interesting idea, interesting discussion you can have. Go check out Twitter, Carter Thomas on Twitter, and let me know what you think. Comment there below. And yeah, cool, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out today. Thanks for listening and watching. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.